Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto was transformed into angel or demon. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. He didn't understand for the first time in a long time. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, the god of shinobi, the professor, didn't understand what was going on. He watched as the board flashed through a selection of the names of the remaining genin before they settled on two. Gaara of the desert and Naruto Uzumaki. When he saw Naruto's name come up after Gaara's, he almost stopped the match right there. He knew who Gaara was. He had spies in Suna village. Just like he knew there were spies from Suna in Konoha. It was simply a part of the ninja life. There was no way around it, and they had informed him of the things the child had done to the people of his home village. But just because he was worried for the safety of the boy he saw as another grandson didn't mean he could stop the match, no matter how much he wanted to, so he let the match continue and simply hoped for the best. When the match first began, it had gone as he expected it to. Naruto rushing in as soon as the match began. He would send a number of clones at his opponent only to discover that Gaara's sand would protect him from any attack Naruto would launch. Any kunai and shuriken he launched at the red-headed boy would also be stopped before they were able to reach their mark. In his frustration, Naruto even resorted to exploding tags only to discover that the sand had made a sand cocoon around Gaara as a way to protect him from the explosion that followed. Throughout the match, Sarutobi had noticed that the sand shinobi hadn't moved an inch from when the match began, not to perform any jutsu or to even blink an eye, and this worried Sarutobi greatly for Naruto's chances of winning the match, let alone coming out of this unhurt. He also made a note that Naruto didn't seem to have learned any new jutsu since he had placed him with Kakashi Hatake. He would have to speak to the Jonin after the matches about that. But what really worried the old cage was when Naruto seemed to be tiring. That by itself seemed to be such an impossibility. Naruto had always been an endless ball of energy, so when he started to tire from making a few shadow clones, especially when he made hundreds the night of the scroll incident, it sent a signal to Sarutobi's brain telling him something was wrong with Naruto. His unseen hand signs to everyone but Kakashi asking if everything was alright with Naruto didn't give him any information, seeing as the silver-haired Jonin didn't have an answer for his leader. It wasn't until Kakashi asked his last student Sakura Haruno, seeing as Sasuke was currently recovering from having the curse seal sealed away, if anything happened to Naruto during their time in the Forest of Death, that they learned what happened. Apparently during their confrontation with Orochimaru, the Snake Sannin had done something to Naruto, but the Kunoichi didn't know what. It didn't take a lot of thinking for both shinobi to know that Orochimaru had tampered with the Kyuubi's seal located on Naruto's stomach. But while that did explain why Naruto seemed to be tiring much faster than should be possible, it didn't explain what was happening before him now. Naruto, what's happened to you? A few minutes before. What the hell is with this guy? Nothing I do is affecting him. This thought ran through Naruto's head as he dodged some of the sand his opponent sent his way. Apparently he got tired of waiting and simply decided to end this mockery of a match and get on with the matches. If that wasn't bad enough, I'm also running low on chakra. What the hell did that snake freak do to me? Single quote. While he was able to hide it in the forest against those aim nins, he was seriously low now, and he doubted he would be able to dodge Gaara's sand for much longer. Seeing he didn't have much of a choice, he went for one last attack and hoped it worked. With that, Naruto charged Gaara, making a couple of shadow clones along the way. He sent them ahead of him in hopes of distracting Gaara as he closed in. The first shadow clone went to the right as he took out some kunai and shuriken from its pouch before launching them at the Suna nin. At the same time, the second clone had gone the other direction, hoping that by doing this it would draw more of Gaara's sand and allow the original to land a hit. The shadow clone drew its own kunai and shuriken, but the difference between this one's kunai and its counterpart is that these kunai had explosive tags tied to them. At the same time, both clones launched their kunai and shuriken towards Gaara as the sand Gaara was using to attack with finally reached them, causing them to poof out of existence. Seeing what his clones had planned, Naruto waited for the kunai to hit before making his move. As soon as the explosion went off, signaling that the kunai and shuriken made contact with something, most likely Gaara's sand defense, Naruto used the last of his chakra to boost his speed so he could land a hit. This is it, my last chance. I have to at least land one hit. Before the smoke from the explosion even cleared, Naruto jumped forward, fist cocked back, prepared to strike at Gaara as soon as he got close enough. Take this. With the smoke blocking both shinobi from view, those in the platforms had no choice but to wait for it to clear to see the results of the blonde's last attack. The team from Suna was sure that their little brother had stopped the blonde, while those from Konoha varied slightly. Team 8 what Gaara was capable of and doubted that Naruto would even survive this match. Team 10 were also sure Naruto had lost. He was the Academy Dobi. There was no way he could ever compete with anyone there. He should have just given up when the match started. Team 9 varied most among its own team, with Neji believing that as a failure it was Naruto's fate to lose this match. Guy, though he wouldn't voice it, was unsure of Naruto's chances if his serious face and the fact that he wasn't shouting about youth anything to go by. And Lee was still cheering Naruto on, believing that someone who worked hard and didn't give up couldn't lose to someone who appeared to most unyouthful. It was Team 7 that worried most for the blonde. He was their teammate, so they had every reason to be worried. Kakashi was berating himself for ignoring Naruto's training in favor of Sasuke, and if anything happened to him, Kakashi wouldn't ever be able to forgive himself. I swear to be a better sensei to Naruto if he makes it out of this. I've already failed those close to me before. I won't fail Sensei's son. The female member of Team 7 watched on as her friend and teammate went for one last strike at the Sand Shinobi. What would surprise everyone, one that knew her, would be that she was honestly worried about the blonde. She had watched the match as it progressed and couldn't help but be impressed by Naruto's resolve to win no matter how impossible it seemed. When her sensei asked her if anything happened to Naruto in the forest, she became increasingly worried. When a troubled look was exchanged between her sensei and the Hokage, she had tried to ask what was the matter, only not to receive an answer, but she knew something was wrong. Naruto was slowing down, and that didn't seem right with what she knew of Naruto from the months she has been part of Team 7. Come on Naruto, please be okay. I should have told Kakashi-sensei from the beginning that something happened to Naruto. If I had, he probably wouldn't be in this mess. When the smoke cleared, everyone was witness to what happened between Naruto and Gaara. Naruto was being held back by Gaara's sand with his fist just inches from Gaara's face, with his jacket open and headband a few feet behind him, while Gaara was still in the same stance he took when the match first started, hands crossed over his chest and staring directly at Naruto, not even flinching at the fist that was about to hit him, as the shield that the sand made when the explosion went off had cracks in it with some pieces falling off. Damn it, I'm so close, thought Naruto as he tried to move his fist forward from the last few inches that separated it from Gaara's face. Come on, just a bit more. Enough of this, mother wants your blood. Those were the first words Gaara said during the whole match, and they didn't inspire Naruto in his chances of winning this match. Blood, mother wants your blood and I'll give it to her. A psychotic grin made its way to Gaara's face to greatly disturb those who saw it and worried his teammates at the chance of Gaara losing control of Shukaku. Die and prove my existence. With a silent command, the sand that held onto Naruto started to pull him away from Gaara. As the sand pulled Naruto away, unable to break free from the sand's hold, he watched as Gaara uncrossed his hands and lifted one in his direction, commanding the sand to surround him and lift him up in the air. Sand coffin. With those two words, Naruto was completely consumed by sand, so no one could even see his face. Naruto knew what was happening. He was going to die, and there was nothing he could do about it. No, I won't die here. I can't die here. I still haven't become Hokage. He watched as Gaara's sand surrounded him, not hearing a word that was said as the realization of what was about to happen hit him. I won't die. There has to be something I can do. I still have things I want to do. I won't die. Not here, not now. With that, what led to Sarutobi's, and really everyone's surprise and confusion happened. The sand that surrounded Naruto exploded outwards, before Gaara called the end of his jutsu, with a blinding light that blinded everyone for a few seconds. When they could finally see, they were witnesses to an incredible sight. Before them was Naruto. He looked like he was standing on scattered sand located under his feet, but they all knew that wasn't the case, as Naruto now had 6 golden wings coming out of his back that were more than likely the source of the light everyone witnessed. No one said a word. Even Gaara's eyes had widened in surprise from what happened, his hand still held up in preparation of finishing Naruto's life, before Naruto disappeared from everyone's line of sight. Give up, Gaara, you can't win anymore. Naruto spoke, his voice sounding like this fight no longer interested him in the slightest. Coming out of his confusion at the fact that his opponent wasn't dead, Gaara responded, "You think you can beat me, Uzumaki? You think you can wipe away my existence? I will kill you." With a maddening look, Gaara sent his sand back at Naruto, only for him to disappear at the last second. Gaara didn't understand Naruto doubted anyone could, but for the first time in his life everything seemed so clear to him. His mind was calm instead of the raging storm it usually was. He knew he would win this fight. All that was left was to show everyone else, and he was going to do that, starting now. Moving faster than almost anyone could follow, he appeared behind Gaara with speed that made Guy and Lee jealous, with his wings folded up around his body making it seem like he was wearing a cloak of golden feathers. Naruto launched a kick at Gaara's back that sent him flying forward before he disappeared again, only to appear in front of Gaara again and hit him with an uppercut, sending the Ikibi Jinchuriki up into the air at a speed that Gaara's sand couldn't possibly keep up with. Naruto then turned around so his back was facing Gaara before he jumped up. When he reached Gaara he did a flip and spun around so he was now facing Gaara before he kicked Gaara's head, sending him to the ground at an incredible speeds before Gaara crashed into the ground, forming a crater at the point of impact and causing a huge dust cloud to form. Naruto watched from above, his wings once more spread out with a disinterested look in his eyes. When the dust settled everyone could see Gaara standing up with what appeared armor of sand falling off his body. Is that all you have, Uzumaki? Such weak attacks won't wipe away my existence from this world. Now come, Uzumaki, so I can feed mother your blood. When Naruto didn't respond to Gaara, everyone watched him disappear once again in a burst of speed, expecting him to begin fighting Gaara again. They were all surprised when they heard him a good distance away from him. Tell me, Gaara, why is it that you fight? Everyone turned their heads to find Naruto picking up his headband before tying it around his neck instead of its customary place on his forehead, wings once more folded into a cloak around him. Why? There is only one reason to fight, and that is to fight for themselves. I fight because by killing all those who stand in my way I prove that I exist, I prove that I'm still alive. Since the day I was born this is what I was meant to do, I'll kill everyone. With that, Gaara sent his sand to once again strike at Naruto. Instead of disappearing like he did before, Naruto watched as the sand made its way toward him, but to him it looked like it was moving at a snail's pace. Crossing his right hand over his chest, Naruto held it there for a second before he extended it hand open with his palm facing Gaara when a torrent of fire came from seemingly nowhere. Those in the audience were shocked. They had just witnessed an impossibility. Not only did Naruto survive Gaara's initial attack, but now it even looked like he was whining. Then to their further shock he had sent insane amount of fire toward Gaara. That's not a jutsu. Not only didn't he use any hand seals to make it, but the fire didn't come from his mouth like it should have. What is going on? Those were the general thoughts of all the higher ranking shinobi, while the younger shinobi were simply at awe of what Naruto was doing. When the fire died, then everyone was witness to the end result. Surrounding Gaara was glass before it shattered and fell to the ground. In an instant before Gaara could react to the loss of his ultimate defense, Naruto appeared before him once again, fists cocked back. Grand Royal was all that was heard before he started to throw punches at Gaara's chest at a speed that his fists appeared to be nothing but a blur, easily breaking through the little sand Gaara had for armor before he did a spin kick, hitting Gaara in his side and sent him toward the wall. When the dust finally started to settle, everyone could see that Gaara was out cold, but for some reason Naruto knew this match still wasn't over. From above in the balconies, the team from Suna couldn't believe what was happening. Gaara was losing, and now this blonde kid had knocked him out. You Baka, you don't know what you've done. Temari's scream came from above, her face showing both fear and worry. For whom or what, Naruto wasn't sure. Naruto only spared the fan user a glance before he turned his attention back to Gaara as he watched the glass that was lying on the floor turned back to sand before it started to surround Gaara. With indifferent eyes, Naruto watched as the sand began to surround Gaara before a tinge of understanding and interest came to his eyes. I see, Shukaku. After learning about the Kyuubi in him, Naruto did what he could to learn about the other 8 Biju and anything related to them. Can't believe it took me this long to recognize the signs for a container of Shukaku. But more importantly, I have to stop him before he transforms and crushes everyone. But how? Suddenly a massive amount of information came to Naruto that he was sure he didn't know before, but considering the circumstances wasn't about to question it. Holding his hand out to the side, everyone watched on as in a matter of nanoseconds light gathered in the palm of his hand before it was engulfed completely. All of creation bows before me. Rushing forward, Naruto slammed his hand onto Gaara's chest before the light went from his hand onto Gaara's chest, making a complex seal before fading from view. Even you Shukaku, seal. Stepping back from where he left Gaara, Naruto watched as the sand Jinchuriki regained consciousness. Staring at Naruto with wide eyes, Gaara couldn't understand what just happened. He couldn't hear Shukaku screaming in his head anymore. What did you do? Whispering so only Gaara could hear and the Jonin with chakra enhancing their ears. I've sealed away your burden. From this point on you'll no longer have to suffer because of it. This just further confused Gaara. Why would he, a person that not even a minute ago he was trying to kill, would try to help him? And Gaara let his question be heard. Why? Why would you help me? What could you possibly have to gain from it? A tired look seems to fill Naruto's eyes as a sad smile made its way across his face. We are a lot alike, Gaara. I can see it, the feeling of loneliness and sorrow that doesn't ever seem to end. It's something I'm familiar with. We have both known a pain that no one should ever feel, and for that reason alone we should look after one another. But unlike you, I wasn't consumed by it. I found people that became precious to me, people that I would die to protect. Extending his hand out to Gaara, Naruto waited for him to take it. And now Gaara, you have someone in your life that would look after you, who consider you precious. The burden we hold makes us brothers, and brothers look after one another. You don't have to be alone anymore. I'm your friend, your brother. You can always count on me being there when you need help. Gaara reached for Naruto's hand, though he seemed to hesitate for a second. Once Gaara grabbed his hand, Naruto turned his head to look at both Temari and Kankuro. And if you want my opinion, I think that your brother and sister consider you precious to them. Just give them the chance to show it. Turning back to face Gaara, Naruto gave him his usual fox grin. Seeing that his brother and sister actually looked worried for his safety, Gaara could see what Naruto meant. They showed genuine concern for him, and knowing that made him genuinely happy for the first time in a long time. Proctor, I give up. 4 words no one ever expected to hear out of the redhead at the beginning of the match silenced everyone into another state of shock that had become very common in this match. It wasn't until the proctor declared Naruto the winner did they all snap out of it. Winner of the match, Naruto Uzumaki. With foxy grin still in place, Naruto made his way supporting Gaara along the way to the stairs that lead. Gaara, Naruto put off the excitement he helped in order to help his brother. Come on Gaara, we're done here. In a whisper so soft Naruto barely heard, Gaara spoke. Uzumaki, thank you. Naruto let out a small chuckle at the turn of events. Don't mention it, Gaara. What are brothers for? Naruto made his way up the stairs that lead up to where Gaara's team waited, with Gaara leaning on him for support. When he finally reached Gaara's team, he noticed immediately how wearily they were of him. Considering how I just took down Gaara, who was more than likely their strongest fighter, it's not surprising. Not letting it bother him, Naruto drew closer to the 3 other sand ninja. Hey there, I think this belongs to you guys, Naruto said with his usual fox grin on his face. It was Temari that finally got close enough so that she could help Naruto lie Gaara down against the wall. Naruto again noticed the fear that Temari had at approaching them, but the concern she felt for her little brother far outshone her apprehension of the situation. Thanks. Don't mention it. It was at that point that Temari noticed that at some point Gaara had fallen asleep due to the strain from his match and almost losing control of Shukaku. Her eyes started to widen as panic took control. Gaara, you have to stay awake. She started to yell as she tried to shake him awake. Calm. Temari was interrupted from continuing as Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. Oi, hold up a sec, Gaara needs to rest, he said. Temari simply shook off his hand before she turned to look at him. You don't understand the danger he's in, the danger we're all in, when Gaara falls asleep. No, I do understand, and I've taken care of it, so you shouldn't worry, Naruto replied calmly. Kankuro stepped closer as he had been listening into what was being said between the 2 blondes and asked, what do you mean that you've taken care of it? Though he asked it as a question, there was an underlying tone that made it obvious that there was a threat should the answer as something bad for Gaara. Naruto held up his hands, trying to show that he didn't mean anything bad by it and to try and calm Kankuro down. It's exactly like I said, I've taken care of it. I knew what the problem was and how to fix it. Gaara can now get a good night's sleep without having to worry about it. Temari's eyes widened at the information that she was given. What, but how? Striking a thinking pose, Naruto answered as best he could. Well, I'm not completely sure how I did it, but I'm sure that Shukaku will no longer be able to bother Gaara without any ill effects. In fact, he should be better for it. With that, Naruto made his leave, but before he got too far, Temari spoke up once again. Wait. How can you be so sure that what you did won't end up hurting him? Naruto turned back to look at her, a small caring smile replacing his usual giant fox one, because I would never do something to intentionally hurt my brother like you wouldn't do anything to intentionally hurt him either. With those parting words Naruto made his leave, seeing as he was keeping everyone waiting by keeping the next match from being called. Temari watched as her fellow blonde made his way to his team, all the while trying to understand what had happened in the last few minutes. When she first had met the whiskered blonde, he didn't appear to be anything more than a loud-mouthed idiot with an obsession with the color orange. Even that speech he gave during the first exam, while it was admittedly inspirational, it could also have had some serious consequences for him and his team. But after all this, she wasn't sure what to think about the blonde shinobi. Just who are you really, Naruto Uzumaki? So what do you think, Temari? Do you think we can believe him? Kankuro asked his older sibling. Temari shook her head as she turned her sight to her youngest brother as he continued to sleep against the wall. I'm not sure, Kankuro. But if he really did help Gaara like he said he did, then at the very least I'm grateful that he gave us our little brother back. But what about the invasion plan? Gaara is supposed to lose control of the Shukaku and go on a rampage. What then? He continued in a whisper, making sure no one could hear him. Temari took a moment to think about the real reason they were in Konoha and what it might mean before speaking in an equally quiet tone. I don't know, Kankuro, but we shouldn't talk about it here anyway. Kankuro nodded his head in understanding, knowing that if they were caught at this point in time they would be in some serious trouble. When Naruto finally reached the others, he noticed that they were all staring at him. Though they were trying to be discreet about it, he could still tell by the occasional glance that they threw his way. Seeing this, Naruto decided to just ignore them, seeing as he wasn't even sure what he would tell them if they asked anything. Naruto. Naruto turned around to look at his sensei, Kakashi-sensei. The blonde questioned. Is there anything you'd like to share with the rest of us? Kakashi replied. Naruto scrunched up his face in confusion as he tried to think of a reason as to why his sensei would ask him that. What are you talking about, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked after nothing came to mind. I don't know, maybe an explanation to how you got those wings coming out of your back. Kakashi asked, though the way he said it didn't make it sound like a question. Wings? Asked Naruto in a slightly confused tone before he seemed to realize what Kakashi was talking about. Oh, you mean these? Naruto said, indicating the 6 golden wings that were folded over his body. Yes, those. Kakashi replied. Naruto rubbed the back of his head as he grinned sheepishly. Sort of forgot about that. Hearing this, Kakashi couldn't help but sweat drop. I guess no matter what happens, Naruto will always be Naruto. So care to explain how you got them? And how could you possibly forget that they are there? Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. They could be some sort of keke genkai that I got from either of my parents. Naruto said, gaining a faraway look at the thought of the parents that he never met. Naruto shook his head, refusing to let the depressing thoughts that came with thinking of his parents to affect him. As to how I forgot, I guess it's because it feels like they have always been there, so it's easy to forget they're there. I see. Do you know what this bloodline can do? Besides what I did in the arena, I don't have a clue. Naruto answered. Not knowing what else he could ask, Kakashi nodded his head in acceptance before turning back to his book. A keke genkai is unlikely since sensei never had one. On the other hand, I don't know that much about the Uzumaki clan, so it's not completely impossible that Naruto got it from his mother's side. I'll have to speak to the Hokage about this. With that, Kakashi sent a quick hand signal to his cage to inform him of what little he learned from the blonde before he waited for the next match to start. Hey Naruto. Hearing the voice of his only female teammate, Naruto turned his head to look at Sakura and noticed the slightly concerned look that she had. I don't think I've ever seen her look at me like that before. Thought Naruto before answering his teammate. Yes, Sakura-chan, what is it? It's just that I wanted to make sure that you were alright. She said in a worried tone. After all, it isn't every day that someone is supposedly crushed to death in a sand coffin only to sprout wings before it could happen. Naruto was confused due to Sakura's question and her strange behavior, but decided that he should answer anyway in case she got mad, and decided to hit him. Of course I am Sakura-chan, why wouldn't I be? Sakura gave him a look as if questioning how stupid he really was. You're kidding, right? Naruto, you were almost crushed to death. But I wasn't. Naruto replied, confused. Yeah, only because those wings grew out of your back and you started to do all those things you've never been able to do before. At least I don't think you could. Naruto gave Sakura what he hoped to be a reassuring smile. Don't worry Sakura-chan, I promise that I'm fine. Sakura could tell by the look in his eyes that he was being honest, and that settled the worry she had been feeling since the match had started. Even though she wasn't why she had been so worried, Naruto simply wasn't the kind of person that would let anything stop him from achieving his dream of being Hokage. Well, if you're sure. I am, so smile. Sakura-chan looks prettier when she is smiling, Naruto said as he gave her his infamous fox-like grin. Sakura could feel the heat coming off her cheeks from the blush that now covered her face. She turned away from the blonde to keep him from seeing it. Baka, she muttered quietly, though it lacked any hostility. Huh, what was that? Sakura-chan asked Naruto as he tried to look at the Pinkett, who for some reason started acting strangely again. Hey Sakura-chan, your face is all red, you're not getting sick, are you? Naruto asked worriedly. It's nothing, Naruto, she replied before she thought of something. Naruto. What is it? How exactly are you going to wear a shirt with those things coming out of your back? This caught Naruto by surprise. He hadn't even thought about that. In the adrenaline rush that came with his newfound power, he had not thought about what problems his wings could cause him. But no sooner did he think about figuring out a way to deal with the problem did the wings spread out on their own accord before folding in on themselves and sinking into his back without leaving a mark. Whoa, wasn't expecting that, Naruto said as he turned his head to try and look at his back. There isn't even anything to show they wear even there. Yeah, but your clothes are ruined, Sakura said as she finally took in his clothes that were now little more than rags. Now I'm going to need some new clothes. Sakura smirked in amusement at the blonde's response. Good, maybe now you'll get some decent clothes. Seriously Naruto, why would you even get something that sticks out as much as an orange jumpsuit? What? Sakura-chan, how could you say such a thing? Orange is my favorite color and this jumpsuit is awesome. Well, that doesn't really matter now, does it? But come on Naruto, that isn't exactly appropriate clothes for a shinobi, she replied. Naruto hmphed in annoyance, crossing his arms over his chest as he looked toward the arena, the damage from his fight finally having been cleared, as he quietly muttered, whatever. As he watched the referee for the matches, Gekko Hayate, make his way to the center of the arena, he thought about what he had not told either Kakashi or Sakura. What happened in that 1 second before the sand compressed and tried to crush him? Flashback. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of constantly dripping water woke Naruto from his passed-out state. Slowly he stood up as he took in his surroundings. From what he could tell, he was in a sewer, though none like he had ever seen before. Unlike normal sewers, this one seemed to produce its own light, and besides the pipes he saw near the roof of the place, he could see nothing else worth mentioning. But that mattered little to him at the moment, as he started to walk down the sewer's many passageways without any conscious thought of the many turns that he was taking, that when he would think about it later he would say it was more like a maze than anything else. But still he felt himself being pulled towards something that he couldn't really be described, though he really couldn't, finding himself caring enough to try. When he finally regained a sense of conscience and thought, he found himself in front of a giant golden cage that he couldn't see the top of and stretched to reach both sides of the room it was in, with a piece of paper with the kanji for seal written on it. And here was where he felt that indescribable feeling become almost suffocating. Naruto walked closer to the giant gates as he tried to peer through the darkness that lay beyond them. He only had a moment to react before a giant claw went through the bars of the cage and would have gone through his had he not jumped back in order to avoid it. Careful kid, a second longer and that would have been it for you. A deep, almost malevolent voice spoke as it seemed vibrate off the walls around them. Who are you? Naruto asked. He tried to sound confident, but a bit of the fear he felt still managed to get through. Isn't it obvious? The voice asked. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The now revealed Kyuubi announced as a giant fanged version of his usual fox grin appeared. Why, you're the Kyuubi? Asked Naruto as he realized who it was he was talking to. You're the reason behind everyone hating me. It's because of you that I've gone through the hell I have. It's your damn fault for all the bad things that have happened to me. The reason why I have been alone all my life. Naruto yelled as he listed off all the things that he had to go through in his short life. Are you done yet? Kyuubi asked in a bored tone. What? Naruto asked, shocked. I asked if you were done yet, Kit. You don't really think you can fool me, do you? I am a kitsune after all, a trickster, especially one who has been sealed inside you for the past 12 years. Kyubi replied as he stared down at his shocked container. Naruto had his head down so his hair covered his eyes as he began to shake. At first glance one would assume that he was crying, but that thought would have been wiped away the moment he started to chuckle. There was no anger or insanity in it like one would expect from a Jinchuriku, but a laugh that is heard when a person has just gotten done playing a prank. Naruto held his stomach as tears started to fall from his eyes because of how hard he was laughing. What? Couldn't you let me have a bit more fun? Naruto asked as he composed himself. Oh well, I guess it's time that I let the mask fall. If you are done, we have much to discuss before our time is up. The kitsune said as he lay down to make it easier on the blonde. Wait, you're going to help me? Why, isn't that sort of against the whole? I am the great Kyubi no Kitsune, strongest of the Biju who only cares about my continued survival, and if you don't release me so I may feast on the marrow of your bones. Or something along those lines. The orange-clad shinobi asked. For any of the other Biju you might have been right, but I am a kitsune, you damn baka. We do not do predictable, you should already know this. The Kyubi explained. Fine then, how exactly are you supposed to help me while sealed away? Since that hubby Tem did something to the seal, I haven't been able to feel any of your chakra and my own control has gone to hell, well the little that I had. Naruto said before mumbling the last part to himself, though Kyubi still managed to hear him. At this point there is nothing I can do. Kyubi replied, seeing that the blonde was about to ask him a question and already guessing what it could be, he continued. But there isn't any reason for me to do much. What do you mean there isn't a reason? If you haven't noticed, excuse me, we're about to be crushed by Gaara's sand. Naruto yelled. Kyubi scoffed before replying, even if your new Kekkei Genkai wasn't awakening, I would never allow you to lose to the Shukaku's vessel. I might not act like it, but I still have my pride, and losing to the weakest of the Biju is not something I would ever accept. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as the Demon Lord's words registered, Kekkei Genkai. A bloodline, but how? He asked. In his 12 years of life he had never even suspected he had a Kekkei Genkai, seeing as he never done anything that would suggest it, so it was understandable that he would be surprised. The Kyubi's grin seemed to get larger at the question before he answered. It is because of what that snake did to you in the forest. The seal he placed on you was the trigger for something that has never happened before. What do you mean? Naruto questioned. In your body there is your human chakra, Mayuki the demon equivalence of chakra, and the Raryoku of a kami. True, it is the Shinigami, but a god is a god. Kyubi responded before pausing to make sure that Naruto understood. Now you aren't the first person to have the Shiki Fujin used to seal a Biju inside of you, and I highly doubt you'll be the last. But what sets you apart from the others is your lineage. My lineage? What do you mean? Does my Kekkei Genkai come from one of my parents? Naruto questioned, not understanding what his family's past might have anything to do with this. Is it possible he knows who my parents are? No, this goes much farther back than your parents, to the time of the Rakudo Sennin. Kyubi replied. The Rakudo Sennin, the father of ninjutsu and the legendary wielder of the Rinnegan. Naruto said as his eyes widened in surprise at the Kyubi's mention of the legendary sage. Yes, him, Kyubi answered, though it is not well known the Rakudo Sennin was actually an Uzumaki. Seeing the surprised look on Naruto's face, Kyubi couldn't help but chuckle before continuing, and it is because his blood, the blood that held the Rinnegan, that you were able to gain this new bloodline. Okay, so I get how I got the Kekkei Genkai, but how does the seal, the hubby Tem, fit into all this? Naruto asked, still unsure how something that was supposed to hinder him was actually helping him. Kyubi seemed to sigh at the boy's impatience before answering, because right before the snake sealed away Mayuki you began to activate the Rinnegan, but because of the sudden change in your chakra coils from the seal being placed it caused a mutation to occur. Mutation? Then I won't be getting the Rinnegan. Naruto asked, only to receive a shake of the head from the Kyubi. Then what will be happening? What is this Kekkei Genkai that I'm supposed to be getting? The possibilities are too great to determine what will happen. It could be anything. But whatever it is, you can be sure it will be like nothing you could have ever imagined. Kyubi replied as a smirk made its way to its vulpine face. You don't know. If you didn't know, then what was the point of bringing me here? Naruto yelled. Because there are other things going on within you besides the emerging of your new bloodline that you need to know about. Kyuubi replied in a calm tone, though on the inside he was angry that a human would dare raise his voice against him. Seeing that Naruto wasn't going to say anything, having decided to listen to what else Kyuubi had to say. Your Kekkei Genkai, whatever it is already purging my Yuki of its poison, leaving it all at your disposal. Well, it's nice to know that you won't be trying to kill me at some point. I guess we'll be working together from now on, huh? Naruto replied. The claws that once again rammed through the gate caught the blonde by surprise, causing him to flinch and fall back. Naruto could feel the Kyuubi's killing intent subtlety rising as its red chakra manifested around its body, though he noticed that it was slowly turning a gold color. Don't misunderstand things, Ninjin. Just because I can no longer free myself from this blasted cage doesn't mean we will be friends. If there is a way for me to gain my freedom, I'll take it before I rip you to shreds. Kyuubi spoke as retracted his claw back into the cage and lowered his killing intent back to normal levels, well, normal for a demon anyway. As for working together, I really don't have much of a choice in that matter now, do I? Naruto shook off the effects of the ki before smirking at Kyuubi, somewhat amused by his reaction, though a part of him was also pissed that he tried to skewer him again. If you say so, Naruto replied dismissively. So is there anything else, or is that it? Because there is still a fight for me to get back to, he asked. Kyuubi grunted, miffed that his threat was being dismissed so easily before speaking. Just 2 more things, then you can get out of my sight. First of all, while you do have access to all my yokai, your body can't currently handle that much energy running through your chakra coils. Using all 9 tails, if even that worth of power, while not being able to kill you, will put you in a hospital bed for several weeks and you'll be in severe pain while you're laid out. Naruto nodded his head to show he understood. Okay, so how many tails can I use without having to visit the hospital? He asked. Kyuubi actually seemed to think about the blonde's question before he answered. Safely 1 tail should be fine, 2 for a few minutes might be pushing it, but 3 or more and you'll find yourself in a bed for a week at least with your insides feeling like they've been lit on fire. 1 tail is okay, 2 only if necessary, and 3 should be avoided, got it? Naruto said with a nod of his head. What else? He questioned. Finally, you'll need that seal the snake placed on you removed. While its initial purpose can no longer be accomplished, it is still disrupting your chakra control. We also don't know if it can have any effect on your Kekkei Genkai, and it's best to remove it as soon as possible so there will as little damage as possible. So I just have to have the seal removed and that's it? Naruto asked. Yes, you can go now. Kyuubi replied as he lay down to go back to sleep. What, and how exactly am I supposed to do that? Naruto asked. But as soon as he finished asking his question, he found himself being flung out of his own mind. With Naruto gone, Kyuubi slowly closed his eyes to get some more sleep. Some would call the strongest of the Biju lazy, but with nothing else to do but watch water drip, sleeping really that bad of an idea? Your son will be great, Kushina. Someday he'll definitely surpass both you and Minato. He'll achieve his dream and be the greatest Hokage this village has ever seen. And I'll make sure to protect him till he doesn't need it. Kyuubi thought silently as he finally closed his eyes and went to sleep, his final thoughts of a little girl with red hair smiling up at him. End flashback. The next match will between Neji Hyuga and Hinata Hyuga. Naruto was brought back to the present when he heard Hayate call out the names for the next match. Looking up toward the screen, he saw the proof of who would be fighting next. Neji walked down to the arena, his resolve to show the heiress of the main branch her place as a failure set. Hinata, on the other hand, stride was anything but confident. The fear of being shown a failure and how weak she was in front of everyone, in front of Naruto, was already gripping at her heart, making the doubt in her increase with each step she took. Standing across from one another, the 2 members of the prestigious Hyuga clan couldn't be more different. One with a mask of cold indifference that hid a misplaced hatred for the main branch, the other, while kind and caring by nature, lacked the self-confidence in herself to bring about the change she wished for her clan. Looking at the 2 combatants, Hayate raised his hand before bringing it down. Hajime. For a moment neither moved or made any indication that they had heard that the match had begun, Hinata avoiding all possible eye contact and Neji looking at his cousin as if looking at her very soul. Hinata-sama, I will only say this once, please surrender. There is no point in fighting a battle we both know you can't win. Hinata flinched at his words because she knew them to be true. In all the time she had sparred against her younger sister, she had never been able to win even once. Her cousin was easily much stronger than even her. He wasn't called the genius of the Hyuga clan for no reason. You didn't even want to be here, so why keep trying? No, that's not true, Hinata replied. As that's so, don't lie to yourself, Hinata-sama. You didn't want to take part in the exams, but your teammates did. You knew that all 3 members of a squad had to participate in order to enter. So in order not to disappoint them, you agreed to enter even though you knew you weren't ready. Neji said, his tone cold and harsh. You're wrong. I wanted to enter. I wanted to prove to myself that I could CHCH change. Hinata replied, her uneasiness with the situation becoming more and more evident. One cannot change who they are. At birth one's fate is decided for them, and no amount of work or effort can ever change that. Your fate was to be a failure, and it's your fate to lose here, to me. Neji stated more forcefully as he finally got into the Juken stance. Hinata, seeing her cousin get into the Juken stance, followed suit, knowing that he wouldn't hesitate in attacking her if she wasn't ready. Up in the walkways, the other participants watched as the two entered a stance that mirrored each other. The members of Team 8 were worried for their friend, teammate, and student as they watched her fight against possibly the worst person possible outside of Gaara. Noticing their similar stances, something seemed to click for Naruto as he just realized something. Those stances and their last names, are they related to each other? He questioned. Yes, they are. In fact, they're actually cousins. Kakashi answered, having heard his blonde student's question. They're cousins. That guy sure doesn't act like it. Naruto muttered as he watched the two stare each other down, though the proof of Hinata's reluctance to fight was still obvious from how shaky her stance was. Well, things between the main and branch families of the Hyuga clan have always been a bit unstable. Kakashi explained, though even this seems to be taking things too far for a feud within the family. I will only say this one more time, Hinata-sama, surrender now and accept your fate. Neji said, though a part of him wanted her to fight, if for no other reason than to show her just how weak she really was. Seeing that Hinata made no motion to surrender, Neji accepted that there was only one way to end this. So be it. Neji rushed forward with Hinata doing the same seconds later. At about midway the two meet and immediately started to exchange strikes with one another, though everyone could tell that Hinata was quickly being overwhelmed by her cousin. With each thrust of her palm, Neji would either move out of the way or deflect it with his own hands before he continued his assault. Hinata wasn't helpless though and managed to avoid some strikes, but the amount that missed were few, and her cousin's strikes at her chakra points were quickly robbing her of both her chakra and what little confidence she had. After a vicious strike from Neji, Hinata fell to the ground breathing hard, and her body was protesting any sort of movement. Now do you see the difference between us? Neji spoke as he looked down at his cousin. Quote, You might have been born into the main branch, but fate has decided that you will be a failure, and no matter what you do you will always be a failure. He watched as she struggled to get up only to fall on the ground again. Why do you keep trying to resist? You who are a disgrace to the Hyuga clan as its heir have no right to be a shinobi with such a weak heart. Your younger sister already shows more promise than you do. Hiashi-sama recognized this, and that is why he now trains her, to prepare her to be the next clan head. These words seemed to hit Hinata hard. She knew how disappointed her father was with her and how it was already whispered in the compound that Hanabi would become the clan heiress instead of her. But to hear those words spoken by someone else made them that much more real. With much effort she got back onto her feet, his resolve shaken beyond belief. Maybe he's right. I've never been able to do anything myself. Even on missions I've always had to rely on Kurenai-sensei, Kiba-kun, and Shino-kun. I've always had to have them save me because I was too weak to do it myself. Maybe I should. That's enough. A voice yelled from the stands above. As one, everyone turned their heads to the source of the voice, with none of the leaf shinobi being surprised that it came from one whiskered marked blonde-haired shinobi. Looking down at the arena, Naruto was glaring at Neji, his eyes as cold as winter in Yuki no Kuni. He shifted his gaze from Neji to Hinata. While he lost his glare, his eyes were just as intense as they seemed to freeze the pale-eyed girl in her place. Hinata, don't listen to this guy. You can't simply give up now. You've worked too hard to get here to just quit. Naruto exclaimed. Neji scoffed at the blonde's words as turned his head just enough to stare at the blonde but still keep the Hyuga heiress in his sight. What are you blabbering about? Fate has already decided she will lose here. What is the point of prolonging the inevitable? A growl seemed to come out of orange ragged-clad shinobi as he once more turned his glare at the Hyuga prodigy. Shut up. Who are you to speak about fate and what is decided? I say to hell with all of it. He shifted his eyes toward the shocked girl down at the arena before continuing. You're here to prove something, aren't you, Hinata? Then don't quite just because this Tem says to. There is more to being strong than who is the one that wins a fight, and now is the time to prove how strong you really are. Show me. Show all of us your strength, your resolve. Show everyone here exactly why you're a kunoichi of the village hidden in the leaves. I know you can do it. You are a fool if you actually believe that one can deny their fate. You most of all should know that no matter what you'll always be a failure. For a moment I had forgotten who you were. You were in my class, having entered the academy early, and even back then you were a failure. Out of everyone in our class you were the only one to fail the graduation exam, weren't you? Neji questioned, though by the tone of his voice he didn't really expect or want an answer. Always acting the fool and skipping out on class, and here we are a year later and you haven't changed at all. You are still a failure, and that is what you always will be, never amounting to anything more than one more name that will be added to Memorial Stone when you die because of your stupidity. Neji spoke out harshly as he stared directly at the blonde now. Everyone watched the blonde, waiting for him to explode at the Hyuga's harsh words, so everyone was caught by surprise when the retort didn't come from the blonde but from the soft-spoken Hyuga heiress. That is enough, Neji-nisama. Spoke Hinata, her voice while still having its usual softness to it. It also had a hard edge to it that no one present had ever heard before. Neji looked at his cousin momentarily speechless, completely taken back by her change of demeanor. Why you can say what you want about me, but I won't allow you to say such words about Naruto-kun. Hinata. Naruto murmured quietly to himself as he heard the young kunoichi defend him. Where is this new sense of confidence coming from, Hinata-sama? Neji questioned, having regained his composure as he once more looked at his cousin with his impassive stare. Naruto-kun was right. I entered the Chunin the exams BB because I wanted to prove to myself that I could change. Hinata spared the blonde a glance before she refocused on her cousin. I can't give up now, Nisama, and not until I prove how stronger I have become. Not when Naruto-kun believes in me, not when he is finally noticing me. With that she activated her Byakugan and took the classic Hyuga Juken stance. This time her stance was far more solid in form, where before she was shaking like a leaf, now her body stood strong as it spoke of nothing but of determination and confidence. Are you swayed by a bunch of foolish words so easily, Hinata-sama? Do you honestly believe that with a bit of effort you'll be able to defy your fate so easily? I'll show you just how pointless your efforts truly are, Neji said as he also activated the Byakugan and took his stance. Without the second thought the two rushed each strike with the intent of cutting of the other's chakra network and ending this match. Hinata launched each thrust of her palms with far more strength than she did when the match started, or than she had whenever she attacked before. Neji was only slightly surprised by her change, and even that only lasted for a moment before he redoubled his efforts. But her attacks weren't the only things to have changed. Neji found that his cousin was dodging more of his attacks. She moved in a manner similar to water itself. The limberness she possessed made it increasingly harder for him to land a hit, while she was able to move in order to set up her next strike. She is definitely better than what I thought she could be, Neji thought absent-mindedly, not very concerned with the situation at hand. At that moment Hinata was able to land a devastating hit, with Neji following not a second later, but to the eyes of all the spectators in the stand Hinata had landed the winning blow. But she is still nothing next to me. Grabbing the hand that landed the hit that had all but guaranteed his cousin's victory, he took a small pleasure at the surprise that now painted her face. Everyone was stunned into silence. While no one outside of the Hyuga clan or had extensive knowledge in the medical field knew just how devastating the Hyuga's gentle fist could really be, everyone did expect that this last hit would have knocked the arrogant prodigy down for the count. The shock that everyone felt was further emphasized when Hinata fell forward slightly with a bit of blood coming out of her mouth. Neji grabbed the sleeve of her jacket and pulled it back, showing the girl various marks on seemingly random parts of her arm, though their meaning was obvious to the Hyuga heiress. That's, Hinata gasped out quietly. From the very beginning my goal was to close all the chakra points in your arms. Neji explained as he stepped back, Hinata falling to the ground from losing the little support she had. You were so focused on me you didn't notice that slowly all your chakra was being sealed away. This was always fated to happen, Hinata-sama. There was no escaping it, there was no stopping it. No matter how hard you tried, fate had already decided that I would be the victor and you the loser. Neji turned away, only sparing the proctor a glance before making his way to the stairs leading up to the stands. Call the match, there is no way she will be getting up. No I can street still F5 fight. Neji had only walked a couple of steps before he heard Hinata speak up from behind him. Looking back, he saw that Shikunoichi was back on her feet, though she seemed a bit wobbly. Why do you insist on continuing this match? You are in no condition to keep fighting, and with your chakra sealed off you are helpless. Neji spoke, gaining just a hint of irritation in its tone. I won't give up Neji and Nisama. I'll show you that your WRW wrong about me. Hinata said as she started to gasp for air as she tried to get back into the Juken stance again. Only she had trouble maintaining it as her arms kept falling back to her side as they felt far heavier than they ever had before to her. Please stop this, Hinata-sama, there is no point in continuing with the match. Neji said, though his tone of voice came off more as indifferent rather than concerned. You only humiliate the clan further if you continue to fight. You have been. Things are the way they are because that is what fate has decided. There is no point fighting it because you'll be disappointed in the end. Hinata shook her head sadly. I can't do that. I can't just accept how things are without trying to do something. You act so strong, Nisama BB, but I can see how hurt you really are. How much pain you must be in B because of how the CC clan is, and I want to change that. I want to make it SS so that you won't have to live with that pain ever again. Something in her words seemed to have struck a chord in Neji, for the Hyuga prodigy ran forward by Akugan in full blaze as he prepared to land a Juken strike at the weakened Hyuga's heart, no longer caring what the consequences might be if he killed her with this last hit. The proctor along with the Jonin sensei were ready to intervene, only to be stopped before they even had a chance to move a muscle by what they saw before them. There at the center of the arena between the two combatants stood Naruto, his 6 golden wings once more in full view of everyone there. The one at the top right seemingly bent around his body, acting as a sort of shield as it had blocked, much to the surprise of Neji and his attack before it could do any damage to Hinata or himself. His eyes no longer the warm sapphire blue many had become used to, instead they were a crystal blue that seemed to freeze all that were in their sight. You have done enough, Hyuga. Take one more step and you'll regret it. Naruto said, his tone fierce yet colder than what anyone had ever heard, or thought possible, before. Neji scoffed at the blonde's declaration, not at all worried. And what exactly could a failure like you possibly hope to do against me? I would have thought that after watching this match, Uzumaki, that you would understand that you can't fight against fate. You really need to shut up about all that fate crap, was Naruto's simple reply as he turned his back at the angered Hyuga and made his way toward Hinata. In a moment of anger, Neji moved to attack Naruto from behind, aiming for the spot at his back where his wings connected to his back. Only to be stopped again, but this time by sand that seemed to have come out of nowhere. Naruto turned around, having heard Neji's approaching footsteps, only to be surprised when he was stopped by a trendly of sand. That surprise only lasted for a second before he started chuckling. Shouldn't you be resting, Gaara? Naruto asked as he turned his head to look over his shoulder to stare at the standing Sunanin who stood in his classics pose with his hands crossed over his chest. Who could sleep with all the yelling you did? Gaara replied. Naruto had a confused look for a second before he seemed to realize what Gaara was talking about. He's sorry about that, guess I forgot, he said as he rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment with a sheepish grin on his face. But thanks for having my back. As a response, Gaara simply nodded his head as he made sure to keep his eyes on the branch family member in case he tried to attack again. So is this how it is? The main house gets shown favoritism, even from foreign shinobi. Neji said through grounded teeth as the spite he felt for the main house became obvious to everyone in attendance. Neji opened to say something else but was cut off as he felt a hand on his shoulder. That is enough, Neji. Guy spoke from behind his student as he appeared to stop him before he could say anything else. Looking over his shoulder, Neji saw his sensei was uncharacteristically serious from his usual goofy if not highly disturbing self. He also noticed that his cousin's sensei, Kurenai Yuhi, was beside the fallen Kunoichi. Seeing that Neji was under control, Naruto made his way to Hinata as kneeled down beside the girl. "How is she?" he asked as he stared at the girl with slight worry. On Hinata's other side knelt Kurenai, trying to determine the extent of the damage her student had received. She only spared the blonde shinobi a glance before she refocused on the young heiress. "She is badly hurt. That last attack was very close to her heart. If we don't get her to the hospital soon, it might become worse," she answered as the med nin that were there for the preliminaries made their way over. "Don't worry Naruto, she'll be alright," she tried to reassure the blonde. Naruto only nodded solemnly, never having taken his eyes off of Hinata. "I wish there was something I could do," he thought to himself, feeling slightly responsible that the girl was now in the condition she was in. From the back of his head he heard a whisper telling him what to do. It reminded him of when he was fighting Gaara, and he knew instinctively what he needed to do in order to win. Gathering chakra to his hands, he watched as they started to glow a golden color, holding them above Hinata's body. The light that came off his hands seemed to reach out and bathe Hinata, heaven's salvation. Kurenai watched what Naruto curiously as he gathered chakra into his hands and was about to stop him from whatever it was he was doing when she noticed that Hinata started to have easier time breathing. "Is he healing her?" she thought to herself. "You were amazing, Hinata. You proved how strong you really are by standing up to your cousin, and that you truly deserve to be a kunoichi of Konoha," Naruto thought silently to himself. After a few seconds the golden light started to fade away as Naruto started to pant slightly from exhaustion as he stepped back. The medics immediately got to work, having been held back by Kurenai, as they checked the girl over. Kurenai on the other hand focused her attention on Naruto, wanting answers to exactly what he was doing to her student. "I was healing her," Naruto answered, already guessing what Kurenai was about to ask before she could. "I wasn't able to heal her completely, but at the very least, she won't be in any danger," he finished as he tried to regain his breath. "But how?" she asked, doubting it was any medical jutsu, since that took years of training and a level of chakra control she doubted Naruto had. "I'm not sure, I just knew that I could," Naruto replied honestly. At that moment one of the medic nin moved toward Kurenai, catching her attention before more could be asked. Whatever it was that Uzumaki-san did seems to have healed much of the damage caused to Hyuga-san. There is still some damage to her chakra coils, but nothing serious that can't be treated at the hospital, and after some rest she should be alright, the med nin said as the others put Hinata on a stretch to prepare her for transport. "Understood," Kurenai replied, relieved that her student was not in any critical danger. The med nin nodded his head in reply as he followed his colleagues out the door. Kurenai turned her attention back to Naruto to thank him for his help, only to find him glaring at the Hyuga prodigy that had stood there watching the whole thing. "What is it?" Neji asked, though it didn't seem much like a question, annoyed with the whole situation. At first Naruto didn't reply, he simply stared at the genin across from him before he knelt down where some of Hinata's blood had fallen on the ground. Reaching out his hand, Naruto swiped it through the blood before he stood back up, held out his hand that was clenched as a fist toward Neji with some of the blood dripping off it. "On this blood and my nindo, I promise you, Neji Hyuga, I will make you pay for what you did to Hinata," he said, his eyes glowing a dark blue that spoke of the power he now held as his wings shone with that same brilliance that bathed everyone. "I will prove that you are wrong and that fate has no say over us, that a person can become great with enough effort. That I swear to you, Neji Hyuga." If Neji was worried by the blonde's words, he hid it well as he refused to answer as he turned away and made his way back to the balconies. Seeing as the Hyuga refused to answer him and there were still other matches to get underway, Naruto, along with Kurenai and Guy, left the arena floor. Watching from the stand, Sakura watched as her knuckle-headed teammate made his promise. She once again was surprised by the blonde. He gave Hinata the strength she needed to stand up for herself and then protected her when it was obvious to everyone she could no longer continue. A part of her wondered if he would do the same for her, and finally healed the girl of her injuries. Throughout the match she stood there and watched as Hinata fought to prove herself and defend Naruto from her cousin. Then seeing how he acted toward her, it made her heart clench slightly. Of course she was proud of her teammate, but watching how he would stare at Hinata during her match unsettled her. She, along with everyone else, knew about the crush Hinata had harbored for the blonde shinobi, but it wasn't until now that it finally registered what those feelings meant, or that Naruto could someday return them. The ideas of Naruto being with Hinata, or anyone, made her heart feel a sorrow that seemed to consume it, and she didn't know why. Why am I feeling this way? Shouldn't I be happy that Naruto might finally leave me alone? But if that is true, why am I feeling this way? She thought to herself as she watched Naruto make his way back and finally resume his spot beside, though she knew by the look on his face right now wasn't the right time to speak to him. A few minutes later the arena had been cleaned of the blood that was still on the. Either because his sickness or because he wanted everyone's attention, Hayate coughed, drawing all eyes to him. We will now choose the next combatants for the next round, he announced amazingly enough without ever stopping to cough. Names began to flash across the screen as those that had yet to fight tensed with anticipation at the chance of being next. When the names stopped flashing, it drew twin cheers from the two participants. Kiba Inuzuka vs. Rock Lee. Cough, cough, cough. Will both Kiba Inuzuka, cough, and Rock Lee make their way to the arena floor? Cough, cough, Hayate said as he went into a coughing fit. All right Akamaru, it's our turn to shine. Let's show them who the best around here is, Kiba declared as he jumped down to the arena floor from the stands with Akamaru riding on top of his head. Yosh, it's finally my turn, Lee exclaimed as he pumped his fist and all but jumped up and down in excitement. All right Lee, it's time you show everyone your flames of youth, Guy said in an overly loud voice as he stood beside his prized student. I won't let you down, Guy-sensei, Lee promised as he saluted his mentor. Leaning in close, Guy spoke in a whisper, as in only people in Kumo couldn't hear him. Listen up Lee, I'm going to give you some advice. Lee came in close to make sure he heard every word that his sensei said. Watch out for his dog, something tells me he is not only Kiba's pet. Are you telling me that all these years you barely figuring that out, Guy? Kakashi thought, exasperated at his oldest friend's antics. That is most excellent advice, Guy-sensei, Lee said as he wrote it down in a notebook he seemed to pull out of nowhere. Wonder if Lee ever met Jiraiya, they both seem to be able to do that. Hey, can anyone imagine what Lee trained by Jiraiya would be like? What are you doing? You won't have time to read notes during a match. Guy chided his student, though it barely came off as such. Ah, more excellent advice, Lee replied as he wrote that down too. Pointing forward, Guy seemed to ignore the fact that Lee had wrote his advice down again. Go Lee. Right Guy-sensei, I won't disappoint you, Lee exclaimed as he jumped over the railing like Kiba did. Landing across from Kiba, the two became deadly serious as they stared each other down, looking for any possible opening they can exploit, even Akamaru. You're one of the Neji Guy's teammates, aren't you? Kiba finally asked as his feral eyes narrowed a bit. That's right, Lee answered. Then I defiantly can't hold back or lose here, Kiba decided as he threw a pill toward Akamaru, who immediately ate the pill as his fur turned a dark reddish color. Going through a quick series of hand signs, Let crouched down on all fours. Ninja art. Beast mimicry. He then went through another series of hand signs as Akamaru hopped onto his back. Ninja art. Man beast clone. With a puff of smoke where once stood one Kiba, there were now two. So this is the Inuzuka clan's Kekkei Genkei. The ability to fight alongside their Nin-ken, Lee thought as he kept his eyes on the now two Kibas. Let's go Akamaru, the Kiba at the bottom spoke as the one on top seemed to growl in agreement. With that, the one on top jumped off the other's back before the two raced forward. With a cry of fang over fang, the two Kiba began to spin in a manner similar to a drill as they closed in with their opponent. Lee stood his ground as the attack closed in on him. At the last moment, when Kiba was sure that he would be making contact, the bowl-cut-haired boy seemed vanish into thin air. The two Kibas were surprised by this turn of event and immediately stopped their rotation to land where the spandex-clad boy stood only a second ago. Where did he go? Kiba thought as he began to look around. It was only a second later that his enhanced sense of smell let him know that his opponent was behind him. Your attack is most impressive, Lee said as he stood behind the two lookalikes, but if you can't keep up with me, then this match is already over. He finished as he threw a punch at one Kiba who was only just able to lift his arms up in order to block the hit but was still thrown back by the force of the punch. Lee then spun around poised to kick the other Kiba only to have him barely jump out of the range of the kick. Lee wasn't giving Kiba any time to react to his assault as he charged forward before jumping into the air, leaf whirlwind. Kiba ducked under the first kick but was caught by surprise when he saw the second kick coming his way. Damn! Without enough time to either dodge or raise a good defense, the kick was able to hit its target and sent Kiba sprawling further back. While this was happening, the other Kiba had recovered from the initial punch and had rushed over before jumping into the air as he spun around intent on hitting the person who had attacked his partner. The attack hit Lee's back, sending him toward the ground. When he hit, Lee went into a roll both to lessen the force of the impact with the stone floor and to get out of range of any possible follow-up attack. Quickly recovering, the Kiba that had been kicked pulled out a couple of smoke bombs that he had on him, knowing that he needed an advantage of some sort against the taijutsu user. "Alright, let's see how you deal with this," he shouted as he threw the smoke bombs at Lee's feet. The smoke bombs instantly did their job once they hit the ground as they released black smoke, making it impossible to see for both Lee and everyone up on the balconies. "Alright, let's try this again. You ready, Akamaru?" Fang over fang. The two Kibas once more became twisters of claws as they dove into the smoke, relying heavily on their sense of smell in order to find their target. In the smoke, Lee had his hands up in a guard position, protecting his face and most of his upper chest as withstood the assault of Kiba's attack, as small tears would appear at seemingly random spots as the only proof that a hit landed. "This is most serious. I cannot see where he is attacking from, but this smoke doesn't seem to affect him at all. If I do not do something quickly, he will wear out my defenses. I must get out of this smoke." With a burst of speed, Lee sprinted out of there when Kiba and Akamaru stopped their attack for a second to catch their breaths. "Damn, this guy is fast," Kiba muttered as he watched Lee land on top of the statue. "You are a most excellent opponent, Kiba. Your teamwork with partner is truly admirable," Lee said from atop the statue. "You said when this match started that you couldn't lose here. Well, I too cannot lose here." "Lee," Guy shouted from the stands, catching the young taijutsu specialist. "Well, everyone's really, attention. Take them off." It seemed to take Lee a moment to register the words before, for he grew noticeably excited. "But Guy-sensei, you said I shouldn't take them off unless it was to uphold my nindo." "I know what I said, but I'll allow it this one time," Guy replied as he struck the good guy pose. At Guy's words, Lee seemed to become ecstatic at the chance to finally go all out. "Right, Guy-sensei," Lee answered as he sat down on the statue and started to remove his leg warmers. Everyone watched as Lee took off what appeared to be leg weights that he had worn under his orange leg warmers. Are those leg weights? What does he think he will do by removing a couple of extra pounds? Kiba thought. After he removed the leg weights, Lee stood back up and extended his arms out to his side before he let them go. Nearly everyone's jaw dropped to the floor, except for Guy, Neji, Tenten, and Gaara, when the two training weights left massive craters on the floor where they landed. "You have got to be kidding me," Kiba thought in disbelief as he stared at the two columns of smoke that rose up from where the weights landed and seemed to go as high as the statue itself. "Ah, that is much better. Prepare yourself, Kiba, because from this point forward I will come at you with everything I am," Lee declared proudly before he vanished from everyone's, below the rank of Jonin, line of sight. Kiba only had a second to register the fact that Lee was now faster than before he felt a fist come in contact with the side of his head. Akamaru, who was standing by Kiba, instantly tried to swipe at Lee with his clawed hand. Unluckily, Lee ducked under his swipe before he hit Akamaru with an uppercut to his jaw. Disoriented from the hit, Kiba shakily stood back up as he shook his head, trying to focus on the situation. "Damn it, he's even faster now than he was before. If I don't do something quickly, this match will be over," Kiba thought to himself. With his enhanced speed, thanks to his clan's jutsu, Kiba rushed forward, trying to close the distance between him and Lee. Jumping into the air, Kiba spun as he used his signature attack. Sadly, with his unrestrained speed, Lee had more than enough time to get out of the way of the attack. What he didn't expect was for Akamaru to come down on him with a drop kick. Lee raised his hands up in a guard position in order to block the kick. The two were at a stalemate for a second as they each tried to push the other one back until Lee finally managed to send Akamaru away. Righting himself in midair, Akamaru landed on his hands and knees besides his partner before the two went into their combo attack. With a cry of "Fang over Fang," the two began their assault on bushy brows, only to miss each time they tried to land a hit as Lee would move out of the way thanks to his superior speed. Though some were close calls, as the two had been working together for a long time and knew what to do, so if one of them missed, the other one would have an excellent chance to land the hit themselves. Seeing that this was getting them nowhere, Lee decided it was high time to end this match. Getting into position, Lee waited for the two to make their way back for another attack. Thinking that they had managed to wear the taijutsu user out, Kiba didn't hesitate in charging ahead, hoping to end this match in his favor, with Akamaru right beside him. Watching as the two twisters came in close, Lee waited to make his move at the last possible moment. Everyone up in the stands was expecting for Lee to move out of the way as he had done before, but was surprised when he instead cocked both of his fists back and then threw them forward when Kiba and Akamaru were within range. Lee gritted his teeth in pain as his opponent's attacks slowly cut into his skin. Luckily his bandage wraps offered some amount of defense, being specially made to last, especially with his and Guy's training regimen. This only lasted for a few seconds before Kiba and Akamaru had to stop their attack from being disoriented from the hard punch they both received. Acting quickly in order to capitalize on his opponent's being out of it, Lee moved toward one of the Kibas, hoping that it would be Akamaru he was attacking to knock him out and get him out of the match so he could focus solely on Kiba. Lee's luck held out as with a quick kick to the look-alike's side and an additional punch to the head saw the jutsu being broken and Akamaru laying on the ground unconscious. Knowing he didn't have much time to spare, Lee gave a silent apology to the small puppy before he appeared in front of Kiba a couple of seconds later. Sweeping Kiba's legs from underneath him, the Inuzuka began to fall back. Whatever Kiba was going to say was cut off as Lee had quickly spun around before he did a drop kick on Kiba's midsection, knocking the air out of him and making him hit the ground hard. Reacting just as quickly as before, Lee grabbed a kunai, only cringing slightly from the pain in his hands, before he held it to the rookie Genin's neck. "This match is over," Lee declared as he waited for the proctor to make it official. Seeing that there was no way for the Inuzuka heir to get out of this one, with the boy coughing slightly to get air back in his body and his partner knocked out, Hayate nodded his head in agreement before announcing it to everyone else. "This, match in now over. The winner is, Rock Lee. Yes, I am now in the finals," Lee shouted as celebrated his victory. "Did you see that guy, sensei? I won. Yosh, way to go, Lee," Guy exclaimed, yelled, bellowed, and pretty much any other word you can think of that means to speak loudly, as he once more got into the good guy pose, and this time his teeth seemed to sparkle like the stars in the sky. "I'm proud of you. It's all thanks to you, Guy sensei," Lee said as he jumped up onto the balconies to stand by his sensei as the medics, and a vet, came in to take Kiba and Akamaru away and make sure their injuries weren't anything to worry about. "Nonsense, Lee, you worked hard to get here, you definitely deserve to go to the finals," Guy replied as he put his hand on Lee's shoulder. "Guy sensei, Lee, Guy 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 sensei, Lee." The two then hugged each other as a sunset background with waves crashing onto shore appeared behind the two. To say all those in the stands were highly disturbed was an understatement. Heck, Gaara was considering killing the two and blaming it as momentarily insanity caused by Shukaku. "Why can't you two be normal for once?" the lone kunoichi of Squad 9 thought as big anime tears went down her face. All the other matches happened like they did in canon, along with the pair-ups for the finals, with the only exception obviously being that Lee is replacing Gaara. Looking at the matches for the finals next month, Naruto was only focused on the fact that he would be fighting Neji in the first round. He knew that he would have to put in some serious effort if he wanted to stand a chance of beating last year's Rookie of the Year. Even with his newly awakened Kekkei Genkai, he doubted it would be easy. Now the question was what he would spend his month of training on. "I can help you with that kit," a familiar voice spoke up from the deep recesses of his mind. "Kyuubi?" Naruto asked, surprised as he quickly looked around in case someone was watching if he reacted when Kyuubi spoke to him. "Who else would be talking to you from inside your head?" Kyuubi questioned. "But how are you doing that?" Naruto answered with a question of his own. "I was finally able to establish a mind link with you, so we can now talk with each other," Kyuubi replied in a slightly irritated tone of voice. "Since when have you been trying to establish this link?" Ever since you first started to use my Yuki back on the bridge, Kit. It was a slow process that I've only now been able to finish. Kyubi answered. It didn't help that that damn snake's seal set it back for a time. The Kyubi seemed to grumble to itself. Naruto gave a mental nod of his head in understanding before he voiced his next question. Okay, you said you could help me. Are you going to teach me a bunch of super cool jutsus? Naruto asked, genuinely excited about what Kyubi would be teaching him. Kyubi seemed to snort at the blonde's comment. What makes you think that I know any of your ninja techniques? What? You're supposed to be thousands of years old. How could you not know some jutsus that you could teach me? Naruto shot back. Tell me, Gaki, when you're out do you stop and look down at the ants and see how they live their lives? Kyubi asked. Well, no, Naruto answered. So what makes you think I would waste any of my time watching you ninja perform your precious jutsus? No, what I'm going to help you with is control. Control? Naruto asked, confused by what the Kyubi was trying to say. Yes, control. Like I already told you, I am a being made completely out of Yuki, the demon equivalent of chakra, and that means being able to keep perfect control of my Yuki. I don't waste it carelessly. Kyubi answered. What I am proposing is for me to help you get as much control over your chakra as possible in this 1 month. I don't think that having better control over my chakra will help me much in my match against Neji. Naruto said. Again Kyubi seemed to snort at the blonde's comment. Don't underestimate what you could do if you had perfect control over your chakra, Kit. Plus I could also help you with learning the ins and outs of your bloodline. After all, who better to help you learn about your new Kekkei Genkai than a being that can see how it affects your body? Why are you helping me, Kyubi? I know we agreed to work together, but this seems a bit much. Naruto questioned as he grew a bit suspicious at the fox's true intentions. You made a promise, Kit. And as a kitsune we don't go back on our word. I am not about to let my container go back on his. So do we have a deal? Kyubi asked. Naruto thought it over for a second before accepting the fox's reasons. After all, it wasn't like he could actually do much now that Kyubi Yuki was becoming his, and anything that made him stronger couldn't be much help to Kyubi. Fine, but I'm going to ask Kakashi-sensei for some help also. Naruto responded. Fine with me, Kit. Just expect this month to be the worst month of your life. Kyubi answered as he started to laugh at everything he would put the blonde through in the upcoming month. Hearing the Kyubi's laugh made a shiver go down Naruto's spine as he started to second-guess his accepting of the Kyubi's help. I hope I'm not making a mistake. The day after the preliminaries had come to an end, Naruto was walking through the streets of Konoha, wearing one of his spare jumpsuits, on his way toward to the hospital with the intent to check on Sasuke, after Kakashi had taken the young Uchiha at the end of his match and had not come back. Tell me why we are wasting our time visiting the Uchiha, Naruto. Kyubi demanded. Time we need to begin your training. Naruto let out a mental sigh before answering. It is not a waste of time, Kyubi. Besides, I still need to talk to Kakashi-sensei about help with my training. Naruto thought, as he entered the hospital and made his way to the nurse's desk. Excuse me, but what room is Sasuke Uchiha in? Naruto asked. The nurse behind the desk was about to answer until she looked up and saw who exactly she was talking to. When she realized that it was Naruto, she scowled at the blonde-haired boy and gave him a nasty glare. Noticing the look that the nurse was giving him, Naruto couldn't help but let out another mental sigh. You know that I don't blame you for what's happened in my life, Kyubi, but I'm really tired of having to deal with these people. He thought, getting a grunt from Kyubi. I'm sorry, but I can't give you that information. The nurse answered in an overly sweet voice and a fake smile. Come on, I'm his teammate and I only want to see how he is doing. Naruto said in an exasperated tone. I've already told you that I'm not going to tell you the room number for Uchiha-sama, so leave. The nurse replied in a far more forceful tone. Is there a problem here? A familiar lazy voice asked. Naruto looked in the direction that the voice came from to find his sensei walking toward them, a hand in his pocket and his Ika book out, his lone eye moving from the book in his hand to Naruto then to the nurse before it went back to his book. Naruto smiled at his sensei, glad to see him, as he would tell him how Sasuke was doing and Naruto could ask him for some help in his training. Hey sensei, Naruto greeted the man. Naruto should have known you were the one causing trouble, Kakashi said jokingly. getting a huff out of the blonde-haired boy, before turning his attention to the nurse. "Thank you, but I can take things from here," he said, giving the nurse a slight glare, along with just a little bit of ki, causing her to nod her head frantically before making herself busy. "So Naruto, what brings you here today?" Kakashi asked his orange-clad student. "Well, I was hoping you could help me with my training for the finals." Naruto began. "Of course, I am your sensei after all, but I also have to help Sasuke with his training. But I've asked someone to help train you for when I'm not around." Kakashi answered. "No, that's fine, sensei. I actually already have someone else helping me with my training, and I was just hoping you'd help me learn a few fire jutsu," Naruto said, happy that his sensei was actually willing to help him, and not just pawn him off for someone else to train. "Well, I do have a few jutsu I could teach you, but are you sure, Naruto?" Kakashi questioned, getting a nod in return. "Fine, but I'll be sure to drop by every once in a while in case you need help." But first, Kakashi pulled some paper from his Junin flask jacket. "Why don't we give this a try?" He finished handing Naruto the piece of paper. "What's this?" Naruto asked. "This is chakra paper," Kakashi said. "It is made from a tree that is grown by feeding it chakra. By channeling some chakra into the paper, it will tell us what element you have an affinity towards, and will mean that you'll have greatest success learning jutsu for that element. If it turns to ash, then it is fire. If it splits in two, then it's wind. If it crumples, then it's lighting. If it turns to dust, then it's earth. And finally, if it becomes damp, then it is water. So you want me to add some chakra to this to see what my elemental affinity is?" Naruto asked, getting a nod from Kakashi. Channeling some of his chakra into the paper, Naruto watched as the paper first split in two before turning to ash. "Well, this is surprising," Kakashi commented. "What is?" Naruto asked. "Well, usually a person your age will have one chakra affinity, if even that. Two is sort of rare, though not unheard of," Kakashi explained as he rubbed the back of his head. "I can definitely help you with your fire manipulation training, but I won't be able to do much for wind manipulation." "Do you know anyone who can?" Naruto asked. Well, I suppose you can talk to Asuma," the gray-haired Junin suggested, as he scratched his cloth-covered chin in thought. "Thanks, Kakashi-sensei, but for now I'll focus on learning fire manipulation," the blonde-haired boy said. "All right, I'll get you some scrolls on fire jutsu in a couple of days," Kakashi said. "Is there anything else?" he asked. "Well, I came here because I also wanted to see how Sasuke was doing," Naruto replied honestly. "He's fine, Naruto, nothing to worry about. I actually came to pick him up and was then going to find you to tell you about all the training details," Kakashi answered. "Well, that's good. Guess I'll be heading out to start on my training," the orange-clad ninja said as he turned to leave. "Don't forget to get me those scrolls, sensei," he called back. As soon as the blonde-haired boy left, another shinobi wearing the standard uniform for Konoha ninja, except for the flask jacket and that he was using his headband as a bandana, and was wearing black glass, appeared not too far away from Kakashi, one hand on his hip and the other pushing his glasses up. "So Kakashi, where is that student of yours you want me to train?" the shinobi asked. "Oh, Ebisu," Kakashi began in his usual lazy drawl, "I had forgotten all about you." "What is that supposed to mean?" the now-known Ebisu demanded, offended. "It's nothing, never mind, but it looks like you came all the way here for nothing. Apparently Naruto already has someone to train him for the upcoming finals," Kakashi finished, as he walked away in search for his other student. "Sorry for having wasted your time," he said, calling back to the paralyzed special Junin with a wave of his free hand. "What the hell?" the glasses-wearing Junin thought. "Now that you're done wasting time, Naruto, haven't you forgotten about something?" Kyuubi asked from inside the cage in Naruto's mindscape, his head resting on his paws. "Oh, and what is that?" Naruto questioned the nine-tailed fox. "Baka Ninjin, how about the damn seal that Snake put on you?" the fox growled out. "Ah, I forgot about that. I guess I can always ask the old man. He will probably know what to do, and if not, at least someone who can help." The genin thought back, though he will probably want me to explain about what happened during the preliminaries. He thought, going towards the Hokage tower. "Just tell him the same thing you told that one-eyed sensei of yours, that you've activated a new Kekkei Genkai. It is basically the truth, and this way we avoid any unnecessary complications with the old monkey being worried that I'm corrupting you. Kyuubi stated. We'll just see what happens. Naruto decided. In the end the Hokage was able to remove the seal that Orochimaru had placed over the Shiki-Fujin, then checking it to make sure that the seal was still working properly, before he asked Naruto a few questions about his new abilities. Naruto in turn told the aged Hokage the same thing about his new Kekkei Genkai that he had told Kakashi during the preliminaries. It's not that Naruto didn't want to tell the old man about what was happening with Kyuubi, it was just that he felt it was pointless to bring it up if there wasn't anything the old man could do about, and if Kyuubi no longer posed a threat, no matter how much the great demon said in the contrary. After leaving the Hokage Tower he went straight toward Training Ground 7. So what am I going to do for this training you have planned, Kyuubi? Naruto asked, his Biju doing some mild stretches to prepare for whatever training Kyuubi had planned. I already told you, you are going to learn how to control your chakra perfectly. Kyuubi grunted. But I've already done the tree walking exercise, what else is there? The blonde boy asked again. Baka, Kyuubi roared. Do you honestly think that pathetic little exercise will give you the chakra control necessary for your reserves? No, Naruto stated calmly, I just wanted to see how you would react. He finished with a slight smirk, and amusement clearly evident in his voice over the fact he could get such a reaction out of the great Kyuubi no Kitsune. Kyuubi let out a low growl before he just grunted in annoyance. Enough messing around, Naruto, the red Kitsune growled out. Your chakra control training will start with you creating 10 shadow clones and have them work on the tree walking exercise. I'll also explain to you the next step in chakra control that you humans use the water walking exercise. Another 10 shadow clones will work on that. Lastly you'll be working on meditation. Naruto began, a couple of questions. Kyuubi. Why all the shadow clones? Baka, have you really not noticed what happens every time you use those damned clones of yours? Single quote, single quote. All that they learn and experience, that doesn't do with muscle development, is transferred into that void you call a head once they dispel. The fox demon explained with a tired sigh. Oh, Naruto thought, just then realizing what Kyuubi was talking about, then what's the point of the meditation? He asked. The meditation will help you get a feel for your chakra while it is still inside your body. By getting a better feel for it you'll notice the subtle differences that happen when you use it for one of your ninja techniques. Kyuubi explained. Hey, I thought you didn't know anything about justice, how do you know what happens to chakra when they are used in them? The sapphire-eyed boy questioned, as he remembered what the Kyuubi said before about not knowing any jutsu. I said I didn't know any jutsu, not that I didn't know anything about them. As for how I know about what happens to the chakra used in jutsu, you are not my first container, Naruto. I've spent enough time in you pathetic ninja to notice the shifts in your chakra. Kyuubi replied. Really? Naruto asked in wonder. How many other people were you sealed in and who were they? That doesn't matter, get started on your training, now. Kyuubi growled. Naruto let out a sigh before answer, already knowing it would pointless to ask the Kyuubi anything else. Hi. It had been about a week and a half since Kyuubi had Naruto start his training and it had gone well so far. He already had water walking mastered. He was now working on doing various exercise while trying to keep himself from falling into the river located at Training Ground 7. Kakashi had also come through and had given Naruto a couple of scrolls on both fire jutsu and fire manipulation. Shadow clones again proved to be very useful to speed of the time it took to learn either technique. It was the night of the full moon and Naruto stared up at it in the middle of the sky, his 6 golden wings out. Every night after training Naruto would spend a couple of hours flying over the city, only when he was sure a majority of the village was asleep to keep his Kekkei Genkai a secret for as long as possible. Shouldn't you be sleeping, Uzumaki? A monotone voice asked from behind him. I could ask you the same thing, Naruto began before glancing behind him with a smirk. Gaara. Behind him stood the red-haired Suna shinobi standing on a platform of sand, his hands crossed over his chest. Some habits are hard to kill, Gaara answered. After not sleeping for so long it's understandable that I only need a few hours of sleep a day. And you? The redhead questioned again. I'm just looking at the moon. The blonde Jinchuriku replied honestly, Growing up it was my only companion when I couldn't go to sleep at night. Gaara nodded silently in understanding. With his former inability to sleep he had spent most nights looking up at the moon, though he couldn't say that the full moon ever brought him any peace since it was during that time that Shukaku would act up the most. The two Jinchuriku stayed silent for a moment, just staring up at the moon, one at peace with how things were at the moment, and the other at war with himself about what would happen in little under a month's time. "Hey Gaara," Naruto began, his voice drawing Gaara out of his own thoughts. "How about you help me with my training by sparring with me? That way we can both get stronger," the fox Jinchuriku suggested. Gaara stared at Naruto for a moment impassively before nodding his head. "One more thing I have to know." Naruto spoke seriously. "Yes?" Gaara asked. "Your brother, what he has on his face, it's makeup, isn't it?" The Konoha shinobi asked while looking Gaara straight in his eyes. Quote, comma, quote. Quote, comma, quote. "Yes. Quote, comma, quote. Quote, comma, quote. I knew it." Below the two young shinobi, three people looked up at them. One was the only Oto shinobi who was scowling up at them, if you could see it behind the bandages that covered his head. He had planned to attack the blonde idiot and take care of him before the finals, but with the Suna shinobi joining him he knew what the result would be if he tried fighting both of them. With no other choice he decided to leave the two alone and wait for another opportunity at another time. The other two figures that were watching the two Jinchuriku were the Suna team's sensei, Baki, and a silver-haired shinobi with glasses that had taken part in the Chunin exam up until the preliminaries, Kabuto. "Looks like Gaara and Naruto-kun are getting pretty close there," the glasses-wearing shinobi observed. "Are you sure that your secret weapon will still be able to play his part during the invasion in a month?" "Gaara knows what is expected of him, don't worry about that," Baki replied, just a bit irritated. "Well, we will just have to see in a month now, won't we?" Kabuto retorted with a condescending smile on his face. "But I think we should do something about the person listening in on us." "I'll take care of it," Baki stated before disappearing, going after whoever was listening. The next day found Sakura walking through the streets of Konohagakure without any specific destination in mind. With everyone on her team training for the finals that were less than a month away, she found herself without anything to do. The first couple of days after the preliminaries she had looked for Sasuke at the hospital, hoping to be able to keep him company, and maybe even offer to help him train for the finals. But by the time she had gotten there the last Uchiha had already been checked out and she couldn't find him anywhere. She also found herself frequently thinking about her other teammate, mostly thinking about how he won his match in the preliminaries against the Suna shinobi, Gaara. "Hey Sakura," a voice called out to her, getting her attention. Looking toward where the voice came from, the Pinkett was surprised to see that while she was distracted she had walked past by the Yamanaka flower shop. Walking toward her was Ino Yamanaka, a blonde-haired girl her age with a bang going over the right side of her face that wore a purple outfit with bandages underneath, and arm warmers. Ino was Sakura's childhood friend, but it hadn't lasted long once they discovered that they both had a crush on Sasuke Uchiha. It wasn't until recently that they were able to mend their broken friendship. "Hey Ino, what's up?" Sakura questioned her friend. "Nothing. I just wanted to ask you something," Ino replied. "If it's about Sasuke-kun then you can forget it, I won't tell you anything. Besides, I don't know where he is," the pink-haired Kunoichi said annoyingly, mumbling the last part. "Relax forehead, it's not Sasuke-kun I want to talk to you about, it's Naruto," the blonde-haired Kunoichi said. "Naruto," Sakura repeated, surprised. "What do you want with Naruto? Could it be that you've finally realized that Sasuke-kun and I were meant to be, and that you've decided to go for someone in your own league, Ino pig?" she said teasingly. Yar, it really is quite sad you keep deluding yourself like that, Sakura," Ino said, letting out a sigh of pity and or disappointment with her hands on her hips. "But seriously, I want to ask you something about Naruto," she finished, as the two began walking down the street. "What is it then?" Sakura huffed in annoyance. "I wanted to ask you about those wings Naruto had during his match with the Suna kid, Gaara, and everything else. I mean, back in the academy Naruto was the dead last, so it's kind hard to believe that he actually won," Ino said. "Well, I don't know what to tell you, Ino. That's the first time I've ever seen Naruto do anything like that. And all I know about it is what he told Kakashi-sensei about it being a Kekkei Genkai he just unlocked," Sakura replied honestly. Really? What a letdown, Ino said disappointedly before her eyes seemed to light up and a wide smirk spread across her face. If that's the case, we'll just have to ask Naruto ourselves. She decided, grabbing Sakura's hand and started dragging her in a random direction. Ino, what are you doing? Let go. The pinkette demanded, trying to free herself from her rival's grip. I told you, forehead girl, we're going to go ask Naruto some questions. Ino replied. And why do I have to go with you? Sakura questioned. Like you're not as curious about all this as I am. Ino retorted. There was no way that Sakura could deny that she was curious, especially since that's exactly what she was thinking about before Ino had called her over. So where does he live? Ino asked, as she stopped waiting for Sakura to tell her where the blonde-haired boy lived. It's still pretty early, so we might be able to catch him before he leaves his home. I don't know where he lives, Ino. Sakura said. Ino stared at the pink-haired girl in disbelief. Really? Geez, forehead, you've been his teammate for a few months now, and you don't know where he lives? She questioned. So what if I don't? Do you know where Shikamaru and Choji live? Sakura asked back angrily. Of course I do, Sakura. It's one of the first things a good teammate should learn. Ino said, a hint of anger lacing her words before sighing. Well, maybe Naruto's not home. Where would he go? Probably to get some ramen at Ichiraku, her pink-haired girl answered. That's not all that far away, Ino commented before heading in the direction that Ichiraku was at. If he's not there, where else would he go? I don't know. Well, what does he like? The blonde-haired girl asked. Ramen, Sakura stated. Sakura, you could go up to anyone in the village and they could tell you that. As if to prove her point, Ino went up to a random villager, asked him what Naruto liked, and, like she said, he answered that Naruto liked ramen. Ino then thanked the man before returning to her friend's side. What else? Ino persisted. I don't know anything else, Ino pig. Sakura said, again, frustration evident. Well, what did he say he liked during team introduction? Ino asked. That he liked ramen, Sakura repeated, getting tired with the constant questions being asked by her friend. And you haven't learned anything else about the guy who's been on your team for the last few months? Ino asked again, as the two finally made it to Ichiraku Ramen, but didn't actually expect an answer from her fellow kunoichi. Hello, welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. What can I get you? The ramen waitress and daughter of the owner, Ayame Ichiraku, greeted the two kunoichi. Sorry, we didn't come here to eat. We were looking for Naruto and thought he might be here, Sakura said. Naruto? Sorry, but he hasn't been here today, Ayame answered them. Are you two friends of his? Well, I'm his teammate. I'm Sakura Haruno and this is my friend Ino Yamanaka. Sakura replied, introducing herself and her best friend. I'm Ayame. It's nice to meet the two of you, the brown-haired waitress said in return. Excuse us, Ayame-san, but we have to get going, Ino said, pulling the pink-haired girl out of the ramen stand behind her, as Ayame waved to them goodbye before attending to another customer. Well, there goes our only shot, Ino muttered. I also have to get back to the store. Dad wanted me to help out at the cash register today. I'll see you around, Sakura, she said, waving her friend goodbye before she headed back to her family's store. Bye, Ino, Sakura said before going her own way. Now that Ino wasn't dragging her around anymore, Sakura was once more left to her own thoughts. What did she actually know about her blonde-haired teammate? Before, she hadn't really thought much of it, but by the way that Ino made it sound and by her own realization, she didn't know anything about Naruto. She had been so focused on Sasuke that as far as she knew, Naruto could have been showing some sort of signs of possessing a Kekkei Genkai before, and she had never noticed. Naruto was her teammate and they spent several hours each day in each other's company, so shouldn't it stand to reason that she would be one of the people who knew Naruto best? She wasn't so sure about that anymore. Before, whenever she thought about the day Kakashi asked them to introduce themselves, she had always thought that Naruto had said the most about himself, but now that she thought about it, Naruto hadn't said anything they hadn't already known. His name, that he likes ramen, and that his dream is to be Hokage. Sasuke had said more about himself than Naruto had. To revive his clan and kill a certain man. Sure, the last half was vague, but at the least he had said something about his ambition for the future that wasn't widely known. And I hate Naruto. Sakura grimaced as she remembered what she said, the only thing she had actually said. She didn't really hate the cerulean-eyed boy, it was just that at times he got on her nerves, but that was hardly an excuse for the way she treated him most of the time. She had once said that Naruto didn't know the first thing about her. Well, the same was true about her. She didn't know the first thing about Naruto. He had somehow graduated from the academy after having failed the exam, learned the Shadow Clone Jutsu, which was B-ranked Kinjutsu, defeated Haku somehow, and she didn't know how he did any of it since the boy never mentioned any of it. When Sakura was once more brought out of her thoughts, she noticed that she had subconsciously made her way to Training Ground 7. She almost felt like slapping herself for not suggesting this place earlier to Ino. If Naruto was going to be training for the exams, then he was sure to come there at some point. It was after realizing this that Sakura noticed that Naruto wasn't by himself, but the other person wasn't their other teammate, Sasuke Uchiha, or their sensei. The other person wasn't even from Konoha, and the last time Sakura had seen him he had been hell-bent on killing her blonde teammate. It was Gaara of the desert. As here for revenge against Naruto, Sakura thought frantically, as it sure looked like it. The blonde-haired boy was moving across the field, his wings out, his shirt and jacket off and lying off to the side so they wouldn't be ripped, as he dodged tendrils of sand that were constantly trying to enclose him, sending blasts fire for whenever the sand got to close. Naruto pulled out a couple of shuriken and threw them at Gaara, only for the Suna shinobi's sand to come to his defense and block the shuriken before they could hit their mark. When Naruto threw the shuriken, some of the sand was able to encase the Konoha genin's hand. Reacting quickly, Naruto created flames in the hand that was trapped, turning the sand into glass that then shattered. Sakura noticed it after a while, but the sand was moving a lot faster than she remembered. Before Naruto could at the very least get close to the red-headed Jinchuriku to land a hit before the sand reacted, but now it only took a couple of seconds before the sand would try and capture the winged shinobi, forcing him to move away. Shaking her head to focus on what mattered, Sakura pulled out a kunai and threw it toward Gaara in the hopes she would be able to help her teammate, but before it could even get close, sand sprang up, capturing the thrown kunai and drawing the red-headed boy's attention. Sakura flinched, as she closed her eyes, expecting the sand to rush towards her in order to crush the life out of her. She could hear Naruto yell her name in surprise, but didn't open her eyes to look at him as she waited to feel the sand surround her, only for it to never come. "Sakura-chan, what are you doing?" she heard Naruto ask from right in front of her. Tentatively opening one of her eyes, Sakura found Naruto standing in front of her with a confused look on his face. Glancing around him, she found Gaara just standing there, staring at the two of them impassively. "Naruto," she asked hesitatively, "what's going on?" "Huh, oh, me and Gaara are having a sparring match," Naruto answered. "So what are you doing here?" he asked her, still confused about what she was doing there. I wanted to ask you some things," the pink kid replied while throwing uneasy glances at Gaara. "Me?" Naruto asked, surprised by her sudden interest in him. "Yeah, can we talk?" she asked. Well, looking up at the sun, Naruto noticed that it was about lunchtime. "Sure, just hang on a sec," he said, as he turned to address his fellow Jinchuriku. "Hey Gaara, how about we take a break for lunch? I'll meet you at Ichiraku," the cerulean-eyed boy said, getting a nod from Gaara. "Fine, I'll see you there, Uzumaki," Gaara said in his monotonous voice before disappearing in a swirl of sand. With his sparring partner gone, Naruto returned his attention back towards his pink-haired teammate. "So Sakura-chan, what did you want to ask me?" Naruto questioned the girl, as he picked up his shirt and put it on, after he made his wings disappear. What did she want to ask? What didn't she want to ask him? Now not only was there the mystery of his new Kekkei Genkai, but also why he was training with a guy who had initially wanted to kill him. But she also remembered her discussion with Ino and her own thoughts about not knowing anything about her teammate. "Naruto, do you think a good teammate knows where their other teammates live?" she finally asked him uneasily. "What?" Naruto replied, completely confused. "Earlier I was walking with Ino when we were looking for you," Sakura began her explanation. "When she asked me about where you lived, I told her that I didn't know. I then asked her if she knew where Shikamaru and Choji lived. She said that she did and that it was one of the first things a good teammate learns, so I wanted to know what you think," she clarified. Naruto thought about it for a second before he answered her. "I don't think a good teammate knows where their teammates live, Sakura-chan, but it is different for Team 10, they are also good friends." Sakura was shocked for a second by Naruto's answer. Are you saying you don't consider us friends? Naruto let out a sigh. Honestly, Sakura-chan, I don't. We work well together, but that's it. He answered her. I see, the pink-haired girl muttered quietly. Naruto gave her a small smile, as he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Don't worry about it too much, Sakura-chan. Just because we haven't been friends doesn't mean we can't be now. The whisker-marked boy told her. Yeah, I guess, Sakura said, a bit hesitation still in her voice, as she gave him a small smile in return. How about you join me and Gaara for lunch, as a start to our friendship, Naruto offered her. At the mention of the redhead's name, Sakura remembered her worries about him and chose to voice them. Are you sure you can trust him, Naruto? He almost crushed you with his sand during the preliminaries, Sakura pointed out. Naruto chuckled slightly, as he turned to make his way to Ichiraku, Sakura following behind him. It's fine, Sakura-chan, don't worry about it, besides it turned out for the best, didn't it? Naruto said dismissively, making Sakura sigh at how easy her blonde teammate was taking hanging out with a guy that almost killed him, but if he said not to worry about it, then she supposed she had no other choice but to trust him. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.